Hello. Let's hope captions are working today because I want to do a quick check-in around chronic stuff, and I know it will be helpful if you can read this instead of just watching. I just finished doing, I don't even know how many days in a row I am now. Very unusual for me. My 12th day in a row, my 16th day in a row of Inner Dimension Media's Flexibility and Beyond videos. I am experiencing something specific that I'm hoping to connect with someone around. And after that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing in case you're working through the same stuff or curious about the same stuff and would like to look into it too. When I was down in frog pose today, he told us that our goal is to shift our hips backward as far as possible and sink down into there. And when I altered my pose and settled into it, I experienced the most glorious semicircle of pops and cracks right around my tailbone. And I, for several years now, have been dealing with daily sciatica, near daily. My hips are just constantly tight. I constantly feel the urge to crack them, this feeling that they just need to shift in a certain way. The pops and cracks started in my left hip, and now I've opened up and I'm starting to feel them in my right hip, and they're starting to creep up into my lower back, my tailbone, as I stretch and become more mobile and fluid and feel much juicier inside. Less pain, less rigidity. We just had the battery on our Pathfinder replaced, and they said, you need to do this because look at all of this corrosion around all the batteries, that kind of green, white, yellow, it can be a variety, red, scum that builds up. It feels like that's what happened in my hips. I have heard one other person describe their process for healing or their experience moving through healing chronic body pain as a series of pops and crackles that were a release. And that's what this experience feels like to me, a kind of progression from the left hip to the right hip to the lower back. Sometimes I'm getting more cracks up through my back as time passes. And I was curious if anyone else had experienced this and if you also felt like it was part of this release, and also if this rigidity and the rigidity that I'm describing in the hips and the specific cycle of pain and tightness that I cannot get out of. I stretch and feel amazing and very calm. I have been feeling better over the past month, 6 weeks. I moved through the holidays with less downtime than I anticipated, and I am very cautiously anticipating that I'm going to see continued improvement, at least regaining the capacity that I had before I worked with the quack and did the carb-heavy diet and experienced such negative consequences from that experience. My focus has been on, as you know, if you follow me, trauma. I believe that trauma is stored in the body, that it takes deliberate effort to release and let go. The techniques that I'm using to do this are centered on regulation of the autonomic nervous system. If you'd like to learn more about this, you can look into vagal toning or polyvagal theory, I think is another thing you could Google. I'm focusing on my heart rate, paying attention to where my heart rate is, on mindfulness, on presence. I've generally been doing my stretching class in the evenings after the day is over, but after taking my daughter to her ice skating lesson this morning, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to move through the day without it being a slog of pain and just like force yourself through, like any chronic sufferer knows that I don't really know what else there is to do except just hunker down and force myself through my day, getting as much done as possible. Hopefully I recover when I go to sleep, and then you just live that way day after day, or you fall into a flare. The things that I've been doing have been both warding off flares and seem to be a way for me to dig myself out of one without waiting for it to be over or waiting to bleed in my case. Those include meditation, box breathing, floating in an isolation tank, weekly or every other week ashiatsu deep tissue massage. That popping I was telling you about, it's happening right now in my lower spine. Just reaching up and tapping this, and the slightest changes in my pelvis can cause it to happen, and it wasn't like that initially. That's something is changing in my body, and I would love to know where or how to read more about this or to understand. But I'm seeing a chiropractor. I talked to my general practitioner about this. I have a therapist and a physical therapist, personal trainer. I am fully resourced, and still I feel like I'm muddling my way through this, as one generally has to do, even without resources. If you're inspired by my efforts, or if you, like I was, are feeling like I don't really know what else to do, I don't get how I can live my life or have my life in order to move through the process that I'm working through right now, there are two really important components. One, you must accept and believe that trauma is a part of your lived experience. It is impacting your lived experience, and that there is something that you can do about it. And that moving through the time, in order to move through the process that I'm working through right now, there are two really important components. One, you must accept and believe that trauma is a part of your lived experience. It is impacting your lived experience, and that there is